Hello and welcome to my North Node in Aries Masterclass. I am the Zine Witch and I am here today to give you a presentation on what it means if you natally have the North Node in Aries. And you should have been sent a booklet. And when you look into the booklet, you're going to see that there are journal prompts and some writings that came from Jan Spiller that really resonated with me in my practice, and a description of each one of the Aries Sabian symbols. I want to start with that just because it's a little bit complicated. Next to your North Node, when you pull your birth chart at astro.com, you're going to see little numbers. And the first number that you're going to see, right, it's going to be between 1 and 29 degrees. And so whatever degree that you have your North Node located at, you're going to go up 1 degree. So if you have your North Node, for example, at 23 degrees of Aries, then you're going to have to go and look at the Sabian symbol for 24 degrees. And each one of these symbols has been translated over time, and different astrologers and different intuitives have created different symbols for each one of the degrees of the zodiac. And they're different interpretations, but I like using Linda Hill's. I find hers to be the most positive, most accurate. But there's also something called like a Chandra symbol you guys can look up. And, Ellie Wheeler is another great psychic who interpreted the Sabian symbols. There's a great book called Inside Degrees if you want to check that out further. But each one of the symbols has a connotation, a different message with it. So I hope that helps, give your awaken your eyes a little bit more to the North Node and how in depth it can be. I'm going to put a PDF on the screen for everybody to see today. And let's see. Here we go. Perfect. And so we're going to dive in. North Node in Aries, a master class. So if you were born between January 27th, 1949 and July the 26th, 1950, or August 20th, 1967 to April 19th, 1969, or April 7th, 1986 to December 1987, or December 27th, 2004 to June 22nd, 2006, then your North Node is in the sign of Aries. So that is your soul's purpose, to learn how to own and balance your Aries energy. So what is the North Node? Let's start with that. For people who are brand new to astrology, I'm hoping to break this down in a way that is easy for you to understand. So the North Node in Aries, the karmic obligation of learning how to stand firm in one's own autonomy. The North Node, represented by a horseshoe symbol, and the South Node, represented by an upside down horseshoe symbol, are always exactly opposite each other by sign, degree, and house. The nodes of fate are not actual celestial bodies, but there are rather points in the moon's orbit, and the signs that these nodes are actually in indicate what signs the eclipses will be in for approximately an 18-month period. In the Vedic tradition, the North and South nodes are called Rahu and Ketu respectively, and they represent the severed head, Rahu, and the tail, which is Ketu, of a dragon that delivers our fate. Much of Western astrology, it is said that we start off with our South Node, and then we move towards the North Node. Like the South Node can be interpreted in many traditions as where we've been, who we've been in a past life, whereas the North Node is a place that we're called in to bring in some balance here in this lifetime, right? So In Hellenistic astrology, they don't really look at the nodes of fate so karmically. They tend to be more traditional. So the way that Hellenistic astrology looks at the nodes of fate is the North Node is considered an area of increase, what we're going to get more of in this lifetime. Whereas the South Node is what we're going to get less of in this lifetime as we age, right? But let's talk a little bit about these signs. What do Aries and Libra represent? So let's start off with Libra, where the South Node is. So the South Node in Libra is going to be ruled by Venus. So looking at the aspects that your Venus is making towards other planets in your chart is going to give you a lot more detail about your specific journey. Just because your North Node is in a particular sign with other people does not mean that you are destined to have the exact same fate. Our aspects, the way that the planets are having conversations with each other, they're going to really tell more to the story. The house placement is really going to tell you where the conversation is happening, like what part of life. So let's talk about Libra. Libra is an air sign, just like its counterpoints Gemini and Aquarius. So when we meet people who have placements in these signs, particularly if they're near the degrees of our North Node, they're going to be people that feel oftentimes like we have some past life karma with them. People often describe this as being easier, but that's going to look different for everyone depending on their own personal story. Air signs are known for spreading ideas and being the masters of miscommunication. They're masters of communications. They carry the energy of change. Air signs are idea people, and they generally carry a little bit more of an intellectual and mental energy. I like to look at the different signs as different stages of our development. So in the Libra stage, we're really learning to cooperate and share in relationship to other. Libra is a sociable air sign that rules relationships, harmony, justice, equality, and fairness. Libra energy aims to be graceful, diplomatic, and peacekeeping. Libra is represented by the skills of justice and it likes to be balanced in all of its dealings. Libra energy will like to get all of its facts before making a decision. It might weigh the pros and cons of a particular situation before taking action. It's also known to see all sides of the situation, making it incredibly hard to choose. So Libra rules the areas of aesthetics and manners, and they believe there's a certain etiquette to how like a civilized society should work. Libra energy likes to weigh all of its options and hear all sides before making an informed decision. The sign of Libra is associated with Ma'at, the Egyptian goddess of truth, justice, balance, and most importantly, order. In paintings, she was depicted as a woman who is either sitting or standing with an ostrich feather on her head, and in some cases, she was depicted with wings. The 7 principles she represents are truth, justice, harmony, balance, order, propriety, and reciprocity. According to Egyptian mythology, at one's death, one's heart be weighed on a scale against feather. If the heart was heavier feather, it would not proceed to the afterlife. Libra is, after all, the judge, the jury, and the scales of justice. So Aries, this is where the North Node is. So this energy is ruled by Mars. So we will want to see what Mars is doing in your personal chart so you can see what your personal Mars story is. So in the Jewish tradition, to celebrate the new year, the first month of the new year, we blow an instrument called the shofar, which is made from the ram's horn. The noise of the shofar is loud and it's jarring, and it can bring an entire room to a pause. And Aries energy enters the room with a gust of fury, much like the sound of a shofar. Traditionally, the shofar is meant to intimidate the enemy, to declare a war, or to cause call people into assembly. So, as such, Aries energy commands your attention. It is the god of war. Ruled by Mars, Aries is action oriented and physical. Aries represents our primal, pre verbal selves. Mars is the planet of action, and as such, Aries feels the urgency of being in a present moment. It's reactionary. When a baby is hungry or tired or needs a particular item, it doesn't yet have the ability to ask for it. So, what does it do? It cries and it grabs what it needs. It has a tantrum until something will pay attention to it and it gets its needs met. When we are an infant, much of the world revolves directly around us and the development of our ego. We scream and we get our needs met. And this is the Aries stage. One of the reasons that we associate the sign of Aries with sport is because it activates that part of us that has just very quick impulses and it responds to its surroundings really quickly, aggressively, and powerfully. Aries is instinctual energy. It's about trusting your instincts, tuning in. It is the warrior within. It's physical and it shows movement. Aries energy dives headfirst into things and thinks later. Aries energy also rules competitiveness. Aries is a cardinal fire sign and it initiates action. Aries is responsive, reactionary, impulsive, and direct. Aries represents our primal oneness and selfhood. Aries comes in and says, I am. It's an energy that is conducive to wanting to be first at things, to rush in and just go for it, moving towards the directed target. Aries rules the head in the face in medical astrology and shows us how we fight, we go after our desires, the mode and it represents our need for action and our being first in line to do something. It is the beginning stage. And it is the first sign that we're beginning new marriage. The North Node in Aries. You were given mountain to others, it can be moved. Living according to the fight for my values is what matters. Tough times don't last, tough people do. Love that one. If you want to preserve peace, sometimes that means going to war. Some theme songs. I'm a music person, so I thought I would give this North Node a theme song or two or three or four. So the ones that I thought of that really invoke the themes of the North Node in Aries: Frank Sinatra's My Way, Kesha's Praying, Madonna's Human Nature, Wu-Tang Clan's Triumph, and Four Non Blondes' What's Up. Additionally, let's talk about some of the themes. Learning to the ties bind, no more Mr. Nice Guy, and learning how to fight for yourself. I wanted to read a little bit from Jan Spiller's book a little bit later. It's called The Astrology of the Soul. It's very much born practice, but let's dive into what I had to say about the North Node in Aries. So the North Node in Aries gives the sole purpose of releasing their own codependency and need to be liked in lieu of being self-sufficient, autonomous, and knowing where and when to fight. They are learning to tune into their visceral responses and trust their inner sense of knowing. Learning to have full trust in themselves becomes a theme in this lifetime. The sign of Aries is ruled by the planet Mars, the lord of scissors and swords. With this placement in a natal chart, it will be important for the native to learn when to sever or cut relationships that are no longer working in their favor.
For this reason, cord cutting exercises can be extremely powerful. And we're going to talk about that at the end. So oftentimes I find in my practice, people who have the North Node in Aries, they might have been they might have grown up in an environment where their looks were often praised or judged. It's not uncommon for North Node in Aries people to be quite beautiful. You know, Mars is the planet of sexuality and desire. So they tend to be quite good looking. If that does not resonate with you, that they tend to grow up in environments that they need to be very pleasing. There's a certain etiquette to how things are done. So they can be kind of people pleasers and reputation focused. And they're very oriented towards their relationship and creating balance and harmony. Now, Aries North Node people have had many past lives being in the position of being the support person for someone else, whether it is their husband, their wife, their best friend, their sometimes a parent, even. You get a lot of people who oftentimes there's a need to do, to take action, to work, to be the visceral responders, because oftentimes they can be raised in environments where maybe the childhood isn't so safe. Maybe they have to mother or walk on eggshells for a parent. If not this, there's a lot of focus around um, how they need to show up, their reputation, putting on, a smile in the face of dismay. There's a lot of energy built where they have to really learn how to listen to people, connect with people. They can be quite empathic. They can be the type of people that really, you don't have to even be in the same room with them. They just kind of know what's up with you because, at a young age, oftentimes, they can be in environments where that was what was expected of them. And we will find out, the more that we learn about the human brain, when you're in a traumatic environment early on, or an environment where your feelings are not being acknowledged, or given an outlet in some way, we can build mirror neurons in our brains to help us. It helps with that flight or fight response because we can anticipate the movements of other people before they even happen. So this is where we get codependency. This is where we get people who are highly sensitive, highly empathic, and North Node and Aries people more often than not are kind of raised in environments where they have to be. Um, I've spoken with clients in my practice that are Aries North Node natives, and maybe there's another family member where there's a lot of attention going on to that family member, so they can feel kind of sidelined, like they have to go and do their own thing. So they become very highly independent, and they're actually over time as they step into their North Node, really learning the magic of interdependence, that they don't always have to be the support person. Um, it's okay to have a relationship with people where one person does their own thing, you do your own thing, and then we come together and we co-regulate when we can. It's about co-regulation, not codependence. So they're also teaching people that they don't need to be competitive against anyone else but their past self. Um, with that, a lot of Aries North natives, um, you know, they might they might do a lot of comparing themselves. Libra is a sign of comparison. So they might be comparing themselves a lot to other people, and they're learning over time that they don't necessarily need to do that. The only person that they need to be competitive with is themselves and their former selves, right? Like always doing things a little bit better each time rather than being very critical on oneself. So Jan Spiller writes, and by the way, this writing is extended into the PDF that I sent you if you want to dive deeper into it later. Creating internal harmony versus keeping others harmonious. Aries North Node people tend to be sweet and selfless and usually feel that it is part of their purpose and their responsibility to support the team and to create harmony in their relationships. As a result, they focus on making everyone else happy, their family, their friends, their employees. But what tends to happen over time, others can come to expect the native to be responsible for their harmony, even at the native's own expense. These natives are practicing selfless behavior in the extreme, which can encourage unrealistic expectations and the lack of reciprocity in their partners. In fact, they often attract narcissistic partners. Because of their codependent tendencies, if the native thinks that the other person wants them to do something, they might actually do whatever it takes, even if that means sacrificing what they need for themselves. However, eventually the native looks around and realizes there's no reciprocity here, and they're not getting their needs met. Then they feel sad and angry because they think they're being used. Even though they give others the impression is all I need to be happy is for you to be happy. It doesn't really work if the other person doesn't give back to them. Aries North Node people can only resolve this issue when they are willing to recognize that it's not their job to make everyone else happy. Relating in a healthy way as an equal would mean saying, if you're not happy, I'm sorry. Then, if they could do the others the honor of acknowledging them as a separate person and allowing them to be responsible for their own happiness, the native also honors themselves when they do what they need in order to be personally happy. These folks are learning that when their harmony is disrupted to the way someone is treating them, then their approach to that person needs to change. It may be that they need to raise their voice or otherwise firmly let the other person know what they expect in this situation. They are finding out how to support others in being responsible for learning their own lessons. Whatever the other person is experiencing is a direct result of the energy that they are putting out. And only by having to deal with the effects of himself or herself can their partner grow up and change. The native is also responsible for their own process of self discovery. And part of that is noticing what does and does not work in the way that they approach their relationships. For example, one client with this nodal position had a small business. Wanting to create harmony in the workplace, he was very supportive of his employees, praising them for their work, handling situations where they felt they were upset, and going out of their way to be fair with them. Over time, their egos began to surge and they became disrespectful. He finally realized that it was up to him and his business, that he was paying them to support him, not the other way around. Once he became willing to accept responsibility for his own harmony, he told them what he needed to happen in the workplace. He let them know he wanted a positive atmosphere, no gossiping or negativity, and he wanted the customers treated with respect. Those employees who were willing to support his goals remained, and those who wouldn't were replaced. The result was that his business began to thrive, and my client again felt harmonious. Aries North Node people tend to value harmony above all. Consequently, they try to prevent those who are close from experiencing disharmony. They are learning that not everyone has to have harmony as their primary value. For this instance, the other person may value internal conflict as a stepping stone to gaining new insights and finding higher resolution. Generally, if the other person is upset for any reason, the native feels resentful. After all, they went out of their way to help the other person feel harmonious, and their partner isn't cooperating. This dynamic blocks intimacy. Their partner feels violated because they don't have the space to be upset, and the native feels violated because they ignored their own inner harmony in order to help their partner feel harmonious. And now they're upset anyway. Since these people think that the other person has to be harmonious in order for them to be harmonious, they often conceal the truth about how they feel, not saying anything that would hurt their partner's feelings. However, This blocks intimacy because the other person can't trust them to tell the truth about how they feel and what they want out of the relationship. Because of this insecurity, their partner may begin to withdraw. The other person would much prefer that the native be honest so that they could work their problems out together as equals. This would build true harmony in their relationships and allow the possibility for intimacy to be created. However, until these natives build a stronger personal identity and start taking responsibility for maintaining their own inner harmony, they usually stay constantly tuned in to the other person, monitoring their moods. This makes it difficult for their partner to simply experience themselves without the native being in their space. Sometimes the other person just wants to be left alone rather than being changed in order to meet the native's needs for harmony. The unconscious underlying issue is that the Aries North Node people often live vicariously through their significant others. If their partner is upset, even if it has nothing to do with them, they will take it personally. If their partner starts to cry, they cry. There are no boundaries. The other person ends up feeling that it's not okay to be upset because it's upsetting to the native. One reason people want a partner with another is so that they can share their individual feelings, thoughts, and experiences and help each other grow. For example, the exchange could be as simple as the native just telling the other person, when you yell and scream like that, it's upsetting to me, rather than trying to appease them. By giving them an honest reflection of how their expression is affecting the native, they can help their partner to gain greater self awareness. However, in order for this to occur, the native must let others be themselves and take responsibility for their own moods. The idea is for them to spend time alone to discover what they're feeling as a separate individual. Then something new will happen. Maybe they'll notice what they felt when they thought their partner wasn't harmonious and they felt out of harmony themselves. Once the native becomes aware of their own internal state, they can experiment with honestly sharing their feelings with their partner. For instance, I'm feeling confused today. How are you feeling? If their partner is experiencing confusion, it may be a current mood in the atmosphere. And by sharing their own individual experience, both of them can end up feeling better, replacing rigid concepts of fairness for realistic expectations. I love that. So, acceptance of self and others. Aries North Node people tend to sabotage themselves and their relationships due to their ideas concerning fairness. They think that others are like them, that everyone plays fair. And when others aren't fair, often they have trouble sticking up for themselves. This is partly due to past lives they didn't deserve, they served as peacemakers and diplomats, keeping the peace at any cost. In this lifetime, their innate sense of diplomacy can lead to repressing their urge to assert themselves in their own best interest. If they can't see how to deal with something diplomatically, they may just walk away rather than risk the confrontation. For example, an Aries North Node client was approached by a seminar leader who invited her to come as a guest, and she said if she liked it, she would be part of the team giving the seminar. However, at the end of the evening, he asked her to pay for the seminar, and instead of saying anything, she went ahead and gave him the money. However, after that, she never returned his phone calls, even though she had liked the seminar and thought it would have been a good business opportunity for her. Other issues arise around fairness when the native isn't in clear terms of his wants and needs in the relationship. Then, if the others don't meet his expectations, he may decide they aren't being fair and present a list of demands in an angry way, taking the other person by surprise. A more successful approach is for the native to be upfront about their needs for support at the very beginning of a relationship and to honestly express the needs as they emerge. I think that that's super important. I wanted to read one last thing that Jan Spiller wrote on the North Node in Aries, and it's called Taking Action Based on Personal Desires, Instinct, and Self Discovery. Aries North Node people usually look happy. They're always trying to please others and keep things harmonious. They may have a smile on their face, but inside they might feel miserable. When their lives are only about others, it makes them sad and depend on sad on a deep inner level. They keep suppressing their own instincts in order to be nice, but their relationships will never yield the joy that they seek until they become separate and enact their own individual identity. These natives don't want to be totally enmeshed in a relationship. Sometimes they even gain excess weight unconsciously, creating a barrier so that others don't get too close. It's very difficult for them to figure out how to maintain their own individual identity within the context of a partnership because they've been codependent in so many past lives. Their belief is, I don't know who I am or what I want, is not the truth. It's just that this awareness has been dimmed from turning their back on themselves to give to others over the course of many past incarnations. However, to gain their independence, the idea is to stop being so busy creating codependent energy with others and to take time to focus on discovering and developing their own interests. Ideally, these folks would wait until they feel strong in their own identity before becoming involved with a significant other, since these are the relationships where codependency is most likely to develop. So, it's important if you are an Aries North node to really identify what your needs and wants are in a relationship. So I left an area in the PDF that you can visit with after this conversation, and you can really kind of discuss what those needs and wants are by having some dialogue with yourself. I wanted to create some mantras for the Aries North Node, and I came up with May the bridges I burn light the way towards my freedom. I thought that was a good one. And the more I respect my own boundaries, the better quality of relationships that I bring forth. I think that's a big one. So I wanted to talk for just a second about the cycles of the North Node. Um, so when the North Node is in the sign of Cancer or Capricorn, this is called the nodal square. And this is a period of time, if you want to go back and check the dates and reflect in your own life, when you were experiencing your nodal square, this is going to be a time where your path would have been challenged, where things were coming into your life. Relationships possibly were coming into your life or being formed at this point that are going to challenge the path. I did a whole workshop with Stephanie Shea, who is the successor of Jan Spiller, who is one of my favorite astrologers. And it's called the Nodal Reversal, I'm sorry, the Nodal Square Workshop. And that's available on my website if you want to dive into that deeper after we talk today. Or another way is to join my Astro School and you will have that for free. All my workshops that I've ever created are included in that package. Um, Also, there is what's called the nodal reversal. And this is when the south node will be conjunct the north node and vice versa, because it is a reversal. And I did a workshop on that as well. That one is called the north node reversal. And that would have been when the north node was in Leo for you guys, or when the north node was in the sign. Oh, I wrote. Oh, okay. Sorry. I was like looking at that and I was like, what did I incorrectly write? Um, so the reversal would have been when the north node was in Libra. Sorry about that. So look up when the north node was in Libra, what years. And that's when everything would have been opposite of where it is standing today, as the North Node is in Aries as I'm recording this. Or if you're watching this into the future, you can look and see the Aries North Node dates in the future, and you'll see how those stories intertwine. When the North Node is in Leo or Sagittarius, also this would have been the nodal trine. So this would have been a period of time where you were fully immersed easily into your mission. I was going to look at some celebrity and client charts today so we could tell more to this story. So the singer-songwriter Kesha is somebody who has her North Node in Aries. And I was thinking about the lyrics to Praying. Kesha had a really, really, really difficult career. She was pretty much under a microscope with her abuser. And for many years, she was not allowed to talk about, of course, what happened to her with her abuse. And she was, signed into this contract where she couldn't break away from her abuser. In 2016, she writes the song Praying, where she looks back at things from like a healed state. She's sober at that point. After years of drug abuse, she got herself sober. Um, and so she writes these lyrics, and I think that they're very North Node in Aries. Well, you almost had me fooled, told me that I was nothing without you. But after everything you've done, I can thank you for how strong I have become. Because you brought the flames and you put me through hell. I had to learn how to fight for myself. And we know the truth I could tell. I'll just say this, I wish you farewell. I hope you're somewhere praying. I love that. It's very Aries North Node. When we look into her chart, we see that the North Node for her, I'm using a Placidus system for this today because we're giving like a little bit more of a soulful vibe. It is in her fourth house, but if we were doing this in the Hellenistic sense, it would be in the fifth house. But let's just say this. She had a very complicated relationship with her mother. Her mother was allegedly a narcissist, and she was also a musician. And she was really the person that kind of rode the coattails of her career. And in addition to having to break away archetypally from her abuser, she also went through a period of time of having to break away from her own mother, who was also um, aware of this abuse. And from what I understand, not super helpful. So it's amazing seeing this new uh, Kesha that's fully healthy, embracing her spirit, not afraid to talk about what she went through. She took him to court, and even though it didn't particularly end well, um, I have a feeling that this is not the last fight that we have seen in her life. In her own chart, we look and see that Mars is in the sign of Taurus. It's in an opposition from Pluto, the flames from hell. You know, everything that she did, all of her moves, everything that she was aiming towards Venetian wise, right? Like the arts, it was being challenged by the powers that be. And this is literally, we can see this in her lyrics. It's just very interesting. Um, Mars is supported by Mercury in her chart. Her Mercury's in retrograde. So this is somebody who has to keep a lot to themselves, keeps a lot under the surface, having to relearn how to think about things, to reorganize the thoughts in one's mind. And that Mercury is also supported by Pluto, which goes back to that Mars. So it's like this interesting conversation where she was controlled by this hellish experience with a predator, but she also used that to vocalize the things that she went through and help heal other people who've gone through other relationships that have been very painful, abusive. And she didn't let it break her spirit. you know? Megan Fox is another person who has her North Node in Aries. And just this year, during her nodal return, she released a poetry book about a lot of abusive relationships that she has been in. It's called Pretty Boys Are Poisonous. And throughout the book, I read it a couple of months ago when it came out. There's a lot of painful conversations about narcissism and being in relationships with narcissists. Publicly, she has spoken up quite a bit about how producers, particularly Michael Bay, would reduce her on the set of Transformers to just being, a hot chick under a waterfall, and just the misogyny within the entertainment industry. She has been a loud advocate for women's rights and calling out the bullshit in Hollywood, I would say. And that's not a surprise because when we look closer at her chart, we see that the North Node for her, first of all, very close to the anaretic degree. It's just almost there. It's at 28 degrees, um, which is a critical degree. It's like having the oven on broil, and it's in her third house. So she's really owning how she organizes her thoughts and fights for herself in her daily life and the culture around her. This is a client example. Client is currently experiencing a custody battle over their 5-year-old child with their abusive ex-husband who they identify them as a narcissist. Lessons at the present time are around learning to fight for oneself. They are also going through a period of reevaluating relational patterns and severing ties to those that do not have their best interest in mind. She is currently building a mommune. I love that word. Mommune, like a commune of moms, of other single mothers, while putting together their shared resources to barter and trade for their family's needs. They were telling me the other day, and I thought that this was really funny and it spoke to their chart. So, the South Node being ruled by Libra, we look to Venus. Venus is conjunct Pluto, intense, trans- transformative relationships, power struggles in relationships, people trying to take her power away through relationships. Um, and she was with her friend, and they were, dealing with this big giant house. And usually there had been a man around, to take care of the obligations such as mowing the lawn and, all of those types of things. And they were feeling kind of overwhelmed, looking out at all the things that needed to be done and landscaped. And, this particular client that day was like, you know what? Fuck it. Got the lawnmower out. Does this have oil? We're going to figure out how to use it. We're going to do it. And mowed the fucking lawn. And they were like, you know what? When they come to our house, they're going to see that everything is fucking beautiful. Everything is landscaped. There are beautiful flowers here, and we do not need them. We are going to kill them with beauty. And I love that because that speaks to having the South Node ruled by Venus, Pluto. And then we look at the North Node. What's the North Node doing? It's ruled by Mars. Well, Mars is in Pisces, a very empathetic sign, right? More submissive than not, but it's conjunct Jupiter. So they're willing to fight for their child. They're willing to fight for what's fair. So I just thought that that was like a beautiful story. So I asked you guys to submit your charts so we could take a look at them. And so we're going to go ahead and do that. So this is for Marissa. Hope I'm saying your name correctly. And like Megan, you have a Megan Fox conjunction to your South Node. There you go, North Node, South Node conjunction. How cute. Love her. And this one is in your eighth house. And so your south node is in the second house. So let's start with the south node. So the south node is ruled by Venus. So Venus, what's she doing? She's sitting in the 11th house in Cancer, opposite Mars. So this is somebody who's learning how to perhaps fight for their family, fight for the future of their family. Um, there might, I wish that this person was here today so we could have more conversation about this because I'd love to dive deeper on that. But assuming that this is somebody, they're going to have to learn in this lifetime. Well, they probably learned through past lifetimes how to fight with or for their family, on some level. And there's probably a lot of, I would imagine with this, also there's a civilized way to be, right? Like, so somebody who probably grew up in a family where there was very high expectations of how the family appeared and how they came off. And being, Cancer's a little bit of a conservative sign, right? So like, there's a certain etiquette to being in this family dynamic, right? You have to be X, Y, and Z. And so the North Node is ruled by Mars, which is in Capricorn. So they're going from this very matriarchal way of being to being kind of a little bit more patriarchal, right? Like, especially in the fifth house, right? This is about self-expression, sex, um, love, the places of pleasure, right? This is like kind of daddy energy a little bit, right? So it's like learning to break away from the associations of how women should be, how families should be, and being your own authority figure, learning to express yourself like a man, learning to put yourself out there like a man, expecting that, you're going to be paid like a man. You're going to be you are building things day by day, getting a little bit better each time. It's not about perfection. It's about doing a little bit better each time, but you're coming in with chutzpah, as we call it, um, and going after the things of pleasure and not feeling guilty about it. I would love to talk further about this chart with you. So that, but that, yeah, this is a very interesting chart. I mean, also, I'm just thinking about Venus is in this beautiful support with Jupiter. So she wants to grow, she wants to learn, she wants to learn through relationships. And so this is somebody who's probably very relationship oriented and learning how to kind of balance that yin and yang kind of energy, between their inner masculine and feminine, right? So the North Node in the eighth house has a lot to do with the areas of life we're not supposed to talk about: sex, death, and taxes, right? Paying off debts, student loans, the things that we owe to other people. We're not supposed to talk about that. We're not supposed to talk about our own psychology. We're not supposed to talk about our mental health. Like, but this is a person that's here to not only learn all of these areas of life, but to talk about them, to say, fuck that. Society says I can't do this. I shouldn't do this. I'm going to do it because it's important, right? So it's about owning your power. It's about owning your psychological transformations. It's about being able to really put out there the resources that you have, whether they're inner resources or physical, like actual monetary resources, towards something that changes society, that changes that, this would make a great therapist, right? Like, this is somebody who would be, if you're not a therapist, you're probably that token friend that everybody probably comes to while they're in crisis, because you have a toolbox. You have a strong toolbox with the north node or the south node in the second house. Um, One other thing I do want to mention about your chart is that Mars is squaring the nodes. So we would call this a karmic mixed step. So the more that you're owning your Mars energy, that primal energy, the energy of fight, sex, anger, you know, fighting for what you believe, the more that you're doing that, the more you are owning your purpose. Because in past lives, that was a skip step. You didn't fight enough. You didn't learn how to own your sexuality. You didn't learn how to own pleasure, probably on some level, the sensual parts of life, what you can touch, what you can taste, what you can feel. Like you just, like, this could have been somebody, for example, that, maybe they had more of a conservative lifestyle. They never allowed themselves to just date for the sake of dating, you know? They didn't allow themselves to, maybe it was somebody who was battling disordered eating and, you know, abstaining from food and the pleasures of life, eating that fucking bowl of ice cream, You're here to experience pleasure, my friend. And the more that you do that, the more you're kind of owning your primal energy. Chart for Julia. So North Node, this is the opposite. So we have the opposite happening here. So the North Node in the second house. It's about learning how to own your own inner resources, like your own toolbox, creating your own toolbox. In a past life, it's possible. Again, you could have been a therapist, you could have been a very powerful person. And in this life, you're learning how to own your own inner resources. And we think about the South Node. The South Node is ruled by Venus. Venus is sitting in the eighth house. So probably, again, somebody who in past lives, was an artist, was very focused on relationships, very focused on their value systems. And then Mars is sitting in house 11. Again, this is a house that has to do with the future, has to do with social media, has to do with how we're physically seen by the outside world. So this is somebody who is willing to fight for the structures that they want seen in the world. Like they have a vision for the future and what the future should be, and they're willing to do the work to build that, right? Another thing to think about is it's also supported by the Sun and Mercury. So this is somebody who's willing to fight for what they believe, what they think, fighting with words instead of fists. This is conversations going back to the seventh house. So, a verbal debater, somebody who likes to play devil's advocate, or the first person to kind of stick up for their friend when they see them being thrown around, hey, fuck off, tough. It's tough energy. So you're building that mental strength, those inner resources, learning how to make your own money. That's the big thing. And it's possible in like a past life you weren't able to earn your own income, and now you're learning not to be dependent on another person. You're learning to do that shit for yourself. So let's talk about embodiment. So ways to embody the North Node in Aries, tapping into your sacred rage. I love this. I now see rage rooms all the time, those places where you can go and just break shit. That's a perfect Aries North Node way to celebrate. Anger teaches us that we deserve better. I think that's very important. Also learning to get some tools in your toolbox for your nervous system, I feel like is super important with this. Because with anger comes dysregulation, right? So having tools to help with dysregulation is very helpful. One thing I put down was the 4-7-8 breath, which is a great way to reboot your nervous system when you're dysregulated. It's like a control alt delete button for your body. So you breathe in for 4, hold for 7, breathe out for 8. It's, if you're new to breath work, it can be a little challenging to work up to, but the more you do it, the more it'll help. Another exercise that you can do when you feel dysregulated to ground yourself into your body, think about Roy G. Biv, The Colors of the Rainbow, right? You're going to sit down somewhere comfortable, somewhere safe, and you're going to look around the room that you're in, and you're going to find items in the room and put your eyes on them and glaze over them for just a second in the color of the rain, in the order of the colors of the rainbow. So first we're looking for something red. Roy G. Biv, remember? Red, then orange, then yellow, all the way through the colors of the rainbow. What this actually does is it your primal responses when you are dysregulated are coming from the front part of your brain, the amygdala, right? And so it helps you move from that part of your brain to the more logic based part of your brain. So lovely exercise. And then for magical people, cord cutting. So cord cutting is a really beautiful visual exercising what we need to release. So if you wanted to do a cord cutting, you would focus on either a person or a thing that you want to break up with, that you want to release. Close your eyes, get yourself into a meditative state, and go through grounding yourself, centering yourself, and trying to connect and focus in on your intention. You want to scan your energy body and your aura, and you want to feel where things are maybe coming up in your body, where you're feeling that energy coming through to you when you think about this person, place, or thing. And you want to imagine it like a cord that's actually you're bound to in some way. So you'll imagine this feeling, like maybe you'll feel this in your stomach when you think about this person. You'll imagine a cord going into your stomach to this person. And you want to meditate for just a moment on taking a scissor. And you can actually, if you want, you can actually grab a scissor if you want to. If you need to take the scissor, if that is very Mars, by all means, and start cutting until not your stomach. You're not going to cut your stomach. You're going to cut this cord. And then I want you to shake it off of you. That's one way to do a cord cutting. Another way is to do an actual spell working. And to do that, you're going to need to get some materials. Um, so you'll probably need to get some scissors, some string, and you're going to get 2 white candles, some string. And actually, I just want to say if this is a family member, blue candles are actually good for family members, and red is actually good for like a sexual relationship. Pink is really good for a friendship, but white candles are always fine if you don't have the colored candles. It's really optional. Okay. So you use what you can do. What you can do. Um, so you start with 2 candles, preferably ones that have really long wicks that can be tied together. Alternatively, you can also buy twin candles that share the same wick. They are usually hand dipped candles, so you will need to melt the bottom to a plate if you don't have a proper candle holder. If you can't find this style of candle, a standard chime candle and some string works just as well. Position the candles on a plate or tray and tie the twine around them so that the flames can burn through as the candles melt. The candle should be a chime that takes about 2 hours to burn. I like using the Shabbos candles. I think they're quite affordable. So you tie the two candle wicks together, and then you add the string to connect them, and you have them on the plate. And you're going to stop and take a few deep breaths, ground your energy, and begin to imagine yourself over one of the candles and the image of the other person or thing over the other candle. This is showing you a visual representation of the two of you together breaking apart. You will want to allow the candles to burn down completely, breaking through the string if used. And it can be helpful to read the wax afterwards as a form of divination. But if there's different websites you can go to online to read candle wax. But I'm also happy to do that for you if you need. That is an offering I'm going to be putting up on my website soon. So yeah, to do a cord cutting. Another thing you can do, if that sounds all again too complicated for you, maybe you're neurodivergent and that's stressful, or you live in an area where you can't, do candle magic, right? And make a mess. Maybe you have a lot of pets. I really enjoy Reiki videos with cord cuttings, and the two that I would recommend. First of all, I love the Loon and Nate on YouTube. She's a Reiki practitioner who does these ASMR style videos. Really great. She does a number of them. And then also there's a man named the Purple Hair, and he also does really great cord cutting videos as well. So this is about the time I would leave it up to a Q&A. So I'm going to stop recording here and answer any questions off air. But thank you guys for joining me. And if you're not an Astro School member, please consider joining, because you'll get access to workshops just like this one, and thousands of other videos to help you learn astrology. And it supports my work as a disabled astrologer. So thank you so much for coming tonight, and I wish you guys the best. Take care.